In this video, I will cover Erwin Rommel's infantry attacks. The coverage will be broken up into 4 parts, similar to the book. Part 1 covers Rommel's participation in the War of Movement in Belgium and northern France. Part 2 covers trench warfare in the Argonne and the High Vosges. Part 3 will cover Rommel's campaigning in Romania and the Carpathians. Part 4 will cover Rommel's campaigning in Italy as well as a conclusion. Part 1, The War of Movement, Belgium and Northern France, 1914. The Imperial German Army marched happily into Belgium and France, singing to the tune of Die Wacht am Rhein. Their bellies were full, they were comfortably warm in the temperate climate of Western Europe in summer. Rommel served as an infantry lieutenant and platoon commander in the Smart Fuchs battery, but he longed to serve in the infantry. His previous work had been supervising training before the war. In 1914, as they headed towards the front, the soldiers radiated joy, animation, and anticipation. At the frontier. After arriving at the front, Rommel organized combat exercises for a few days. He placed heavy emphasis on learning to use the shovel to dig trenches. Rommel complains of stomach disturbances from the greasy food and the freshly baked bread. After this, his unit had to conduct reconnaissance in the direction of Longwy as preparation for the first battle. Now, at the end of every section, Rommel gives his observations of the previous battle and gives correlating advice. Here I will follow his structure and give regular observations, updates, and his advice. Advances must be cautious. When entering a village, the commander should put units on the left and right. When covering open stretches, fire support must be arranged beforehand. Advances during night should be aided by illuminated compasses. Train soldiers to find their direction in the dark. Detachments should be kept off the roads and observe the terrain. Battle of Bleide. On the south and west slopes of Hill 325, German units clashed with the enemy in the fog. Rommel had great difficulty making out the enemy positions clearly, and was forced to bring up his whole platoon. But before that could be completed, he was found with 3 fellow soldiers pinned by French fire, with the, quote, peculiar sound of rifle bullets at close range whizzing above his head. He advanced through a potato and vegetable field. He almost had his ear shot off in this combat. The fog made it hard to see friend from foe, and so unsure about position of his company and the 2nd Battalion, Rommel did the safe thing and pulled back. Just kidding, he attacked anyway. One thing you need to understand about Rommel is that he is bordering on crazy. To him, the only way is forward, and you will see how it rewards him in World War I. He arrived near French positions without support, and yet he successfully found the French hiding in the bushes. He captured 50 men. His unit lost 25% of officers and 15% of the men. Here you can see the active officer corps in the German army that take great risks with their own life and are willing to pay the price in blood. Observations. It is difficult to maintain contact with units in the fog. Soldiers must use the compass in the fog. Keep machine guns ready during an advance. The side with more firepower has the upper hand. Hand grenades and machine gun pistols are essential for close fighting. Village fights have high casualties. When necessary, blind the enemy and hit outside the town. On the Meuse, battles at Mont and in the D40 Woods. Following the Battle of Longwy, the enemy was pursued southwest, then west. French artillery covered the infantry withdrawal with concentrated fire. Here Rommel notes the French artillery's superiority in material. Here, Rommel crawled on his belly to within 100 yards of the enemy, got up, and charged. Later, he spotted a French battery in a Briere farm. He advanced with 12 men at 100 yards to the enemy. He came under fire from the friendly 127th Infantry. He failed to signal friendly units. By the time it was over, it was too late to attack the battery. None of the 12 were injured. This incident highlights the future usefulness of handheld radios, as they are useful for communicating to other units to prevent friendly fire incidents. After this combat, he went into a woman's home. She was initially frightened, but he asked in French for food. He slept there regally, but was eaten by bedbugs. I find this a rather odd incident. Despite the fact he was an invader of her country, she accommodated him with little objection. It was standard practice to request quartermaster tickets for any produce given to soldiers, yet he gave none. The war was not yet the life-or-death struggle for nationhood it would become, and the average person did not quite care about the political issues that started the war. Observations. The attack on the engineer company shows all units must be able to provide their own security. There should be increased dispersion and foxhole usage because of the more powerful artillery. Begin digging before the first bombardment. Do not march or halt within range of artillery. Chapter 2. Battles at Gesnes, D40 Woods, and Rembercourt. September 2nd, 1914. The battalion heads for Villers-de-Fontdune. The morale is high in spite of the battles fought. Rommel is given the job to find the battalion kitchens and bring them up. Then there was a pursuit through the Argonne and a fight at Pretz. The unit marched to Boril. The road showed abandoned packs and guns from the French. There was then an attack at D40 Woods. The regiment ordered 2nd Battalion to cross the highway and take the woods. Rommel ordered soldiers to not advance after failing to see the grenadiers that were supposed to be supporting him on his right. He rode back, found out the attack was held up. The French artillery were starting to really hit with great sights. Observations. Don't attack with zero cover. Don't mass together. The shovel is super important, and command posts must be dispersed to avoid artillery. The battle at the D40 Woods. The deep trenches reduced casualties. Rommel and his soldiers got their trench to 4.5 feet deep before the French artillery opened up. Seeing French reserves on the left, Rommel suggested flanking fire to the machine gun platoon commander. This was rejected, however. So, Rommel, realizing the wisdom of higher authority and the merits of prudence, just kidding, he takes the matters into his own hands like a maverick. He took the platoon and got them firing in minutes. Later, there was a night attack. Observations. Night attacks risk friendly fire. Rain favored the attack by obscuring the advance. Most casualties occurred while trenching under artillery fire. The French infantry had retreated, and ammunition shortages weakened the German artillery. Chapter 3. Fighting near Mont Blaineville. At this point in the war, the Germans had to retreat on the Western Front. After moving away some troops from the west to fight in the east, which violated the plan, the Western Allies broke the German advance on its flanks, forcing the Germans to retreat and begin setting up more permanent fortifications. The withdrawal was a huge blow to German morale, and now the Germans would not be able to extract resources from fresh French lands. Before in the war, trenches were dug constantly in an ad hoc manner, even during advances. But following this point in the war on the Western Front, the trenches will become a permanent system of fortifications, and there will be little movement forwards or backwards. Retirement through the Argonne. Rommel was ordered to retreat despite there being no pressure directly at his front. Heavy supplies turned the roads to mud. Engagement on Mont Blaineville, storming Bouzon Woods. Rommel designs an attack up the Mont Blaineville-Servan road to take the French in the flank and roll him up on the west. Rommel studied the terrain very carefully and determined the French would not expect an attack there due to the sector seeming initially unfavorable. The attack was approved and translated into action. At the cost of 4 men, the Germans gained 50 prisoners, several machine guns, and 10 artillery ammunition wagons. Rommel's attack had gone off wonderfully. After having gone for a long night without food, Rommel's soldiers enjoyed a hot meal. Observations. Guides must lead the relief of frontline battalions, use the shovel before daybreak, and use light machine guns or artillery for reconnaissance support. Forest fighting along the Roman road, September 24th. After an attack that initially stalls, Rommel suggests an attack on both sides of the road to seize Varennes. Rommel finds himself trapped with no ammunition left, facing 3 French soldiers and several of his men behind him. With the bayonet as his last resort and quite the skill at using it, he charges the Frenchman. Struck in the upper left leg, now shattered, he is then saved and bandaged. For this action and others, he is given the Iron Cross. Observations. High casualty rates made it hard to advance. A personal example from the officer keeps the troops moving forward. And in man-to-man combat, the one with more ammunition wins. That is the conclusion to Part 1 of Infantry Attacks by Erwin Rommel. Comment below if you want to see the continuation sooner, or let me know if you'd prefer something else. Eventually I will do Parts 2 and 3.